Most people harbor a fundamental misconception about how lives decline or fall apart. They believe it is a dramatic process. They imagine a series of catastrophic events, a sudden explosive failure that rips the fabric of a person's existence. They expect the movie trailer version of ruin, a bad decision that leads to immediate, irreversible financial loss, a dramatic failure in a career resulting in public humiliation, a sudden crisis, a health scare, a betrayal that brings everything to a halt. While these events do happen, they are the minority. They are the visible, sharp edges of tragedy. But the true danger, the pervasive menace, is far less dramatic and far more insidious. In reality, most lives don't collapse. They drift. This drifting is the silent killer of potential. Nothing catastrophic happens to grab the headlines of your life. Nothing urgent demands your immediate, undivided attention. You are not forced to make a course correction. Instead, a day passes, then a week, then a month, then a year. And without the friction of a crisis, without the alarm of an emergency, the slow, imperceptible movement away from your potential continues. Days pass, then years, and slowly, almost invisibly, life narrows. Your options diminish. Your energy wanes. Your knowledge stagnates. The future you once dreamed of becomes a shadow, not because a single massive mistake was made, but because nothing ever compounded in your favor. This is the great understated tragedy of the modern world, the slow, silent erosion of opportunity. But there is another way life unfolds, a quieter way, a path that is less dramatic, less reliant on heroic bursts of energy, and ultimately less exhausting. This way is not built on motivation, because motivation is a feeling that fluctuates with the weather. Habits, because habits alone often lead to repetition, not advancement. Sacrifice, because the mind resists what feels like constant deprivation. It is built on something far more fundamental, something that governs the universe, nature, and human progress. It is built on an unbreakable principle, the compound effect. This is the key to escaping the drift. It is the wisdom required to build a life that gets better, not just faster, but exponentially. Now, let's define what the compound effect truly means in life. When people hear the word compounding, their minds almost universally jump to one domain: finance. They think of interest, investments, and quarterly returns. They see compounding as a financial trick, a sophisticated mechanism for multiplying money. But this interpretation is a severe limitation. Compounding is not a financial trick. It is a fundamental law of accumulation. It is the principle that small inputs, applied consistently over time, do not merely add up. 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. They multiply, generating momentum that grows with each cycle. 1 × 2 × 4 × 8 = 64. The core power of compounding is that it makes time, the one resource we all have, our ultimate ally. This law of accumulation applies to virtually every dimension of human existence. Skills. An extra 30 minutes of deliberate practice daily or even weekly doesn't just add hours, it compounds expertise, differentiating competence from mastery. Health. Small dietary choices, tiny moments of movement, and regular sleep don't just maintain health, they create a metabolic and immune buffer against decay. Knowledge. Reading a single high-quality article or book chapter daily compounds into a vast, interconnected mental model of the world. Reputation and trust. Keeping small commitments consistently builds a reservoir of social capital that can sustain you through a major crisis. Judgment. Analyzing why small decisions led to unexpected outcomes, whether good or bad, sharpens every decision. Identity. Every tiny action you take casts a vote for the person you want to become. These small votes compound into a robust, undeniable self-concept. Let me explain the mystery of the delayed effect. The reason compounding feels mysterious, even magical, is simple. Its effects are profoundly delayed. Imagine two people saving. One saves $100 a month. The other saves $0. For the first 2 years, their lives look virtually identical. The saver might feel like they are missing out on small purchases. Then 5 years pass. The saver now has a small, modest cushion. 10 years pass. The cushion is now significant thanks to the interest on the interest on the interest. 15 years pass. Suddenly, everything appears to change. The saver is able to buy a house, pivot careers, or take a sabbatical. People who haven't seen the decade of small, invisible inputs will look at the outcome, the new job, the financial independence, the mastery, and call it luck, talent, overnight success. But what they are really seeing is years of invisible accumulation finally crossing a threshold. Compounding is the engine of the late bloomer, the secret of the quiet achiever. It doesn't require a sprint. It requires a long walk in the right direction. That brings us to a crucial clarification. Progress is not just habits. At this point, it is crucial for a channel dedicated to practical intelligence and wisdom to clarify a common misinterpretation. We are not talking about daily habits in the popular self-help sense. The prevailing wisdom often focuses on the repetition of the same action. The idea is to automate behavior to make it effortless. But there is a ceiling to this. Habits repeat the same action, for example, flossing teeth, making coffee, checking email. They maintain the baseline. Progress advances capability, for example, learning a new skill, solving a higher-level problem, generating new output. Compounding requires progress, not mere repetition. If you repeat the same action endlessly, you only get an increasingly polished version of the same result. The student who rereads the first chapter of a textbook 1,000 times has a perfect understanding of Chapter 1, but zero advancement. Progress does not require doing the same thing every day. It requires moving forward at regular intervals. The power lies not in the action repeating, but in the return to the action. Let's understand the difference between repetition versus advancement. Consider how progress differs from mere habit in key areas. If your habit is rereading notes, your progress is moving to the next concept or applying the previous one to a harder problem. In finance, if your habit is checking the stock ticker, your progress is contributing regularly to a diversified portfolio regardless of market conditions. In creative work, if your habit is producing mediocre content daily just to hit a quota, your progress is returning to the work when life allows, prioritizing quality and integrating new techniques. In health, if your habit is walking the same 1-mile route, your progress is gradually increasing the distance, adding resistance, or learning a new movement pattern. What repeats is not the action. What repeats is the return to the work with the intention of advancement. You don't need repeatable actions, you need repeatable progress. This is a subtle but profound distinction. It shifts the focus from mindless routine to mindful engagement. Now here's where wisdom enters, direction before speed. The greatest mistake people make with compounding is applying immense effort to the wrong vector. Compounding in its neutrality is simply a massive magnifier of direction. Think of a plane flying from New York to London. If its navigation is off by a mere 1 degree, it doesn't crash immediately. But by the time the journey is complete, that 1 degree of error means the plane lands somewhere completely different. The same is true in life. If you compound effort, time, and focus in the wrong direction, a toxic relationship, a misaligned career, a skill you fundamentally dislike, you don't just waste time. You accelerate regret. That's why speed is irrelevant until direction is correct. To run faster on the wrong path is to merely arrive at the wrong destination sooner. Now, let's talk about the wisdom of alignment. Wisdom, in the context of compounding, is not about choosing the most ambitious or highest-paying path. It is about choosing a direction that matches who you are right now. The correct direction is one that is realistically aligned with your time, not the time you wish you had, but the time you realistically control after responsibilities. Your energy, leveraging your natural peak times instead of forcing activity during troughs. Your responsibilities. The direction must integrate with your role as a parent, a partner, or an employee, not oppose it. Your constraints. Acknowledging the actual boundaries of your current life, financial, geographical, knowledge-based, and working within them. The small step in the right direction is infinitely more valuable than the giant leap in the wrong one. Compounding amplifies direction. Therefore, direction must come first. Pause, reflect, and ask, what am I compounding and why? This leads to the question of implementation, why systems matter more than willpower. Once the correct direction is set, the next challenge emerges. Many people listen to this advice and immediately think, that sounds good, but I don't have the discipline or motivation to do it consistently. This is the wrong question entirely. The problem is not a lack of discipline. The problem is relying on willpower. Willpower fluctuates. It is a finite resource, depleted by decision-making and stress. Fades. It is an emotional state, easily overridden by fatigue or bad news. Stress overrides intention. When the demands of life spike, the most conscious, willful intentions are the first to be abandoned. The truly successful don't have infinite willpower. They have superior systems. A system is a structure that allows progress to occur without constant decision-making and emotional reliance. It is the automated infrastructure of your intended growth. The best systems are not restrictive cages. They are integration points. They are designed to lower the energy required to start. For example, the running shoes are right by the door. Raise the energy required to quit. For example, accountability partners, public commitments. Provide immediate small feedback loops. For example, a simple tracking mechanism for progress. The most powerful characteristic of these systems is that they don't replace your life. They integrate into it. They don't demand sacrifice, they quietly upgrade what you already do. When progress becomes a normal, expected, and simple part of your daily routine, compounding can run in the background, like a silent server farm. You are no longer fighting the uphill battle of motivation. You are simply executing the process. Let's explore a powerful concept, combining activities for progress without sacrifice. One of the most debilitating beliefs in personal development is the myth of the zero-sum game. The idea that for something new to be created, something else must be painfully sacrificed. This leads to the perpetual complaint, I don't have enough time. Here is one of the most underestimated ideas in practical intelligence. You don't always need more time. You need better pairing of time. Many parts of the day are already allocated to passive, non-cognitive, or automatic tasks. Commuting, household chores, routine movement, low-engagement leisure. These are not wasted moments. They are white space for cognitive pairing. Cognitive pairing is the intentional matching of a passive activity with a growth activity, creating progress without the feeling of loss. Creating progress through cognitive pairing. The goal is to pair an automatic task with a growth task, to allow the brain to compound knowledge or skill passively. Pairing commuting with knowledge. If you are commuting, pair that passive activity with listening to high-quality audiobooks or complex podcasts. The compound effect is the accumulation of knowledge and mental models without requiring extra seated time. Pairing chores with skill acquisition. If you are washing dishes or folding laundry, pair that automatic task with listening to language tapes or reviewing flashcards for a new skill. The compound effect is the acquisition of skill and memory in time that was previously neutral. Pairing routine exercise with deep focus. If you're on a treadmill or stationary bike, use that time for deep diving into a complex work project or financial plan. The compound effect is leveraging the body's energy to power the mind. Pairing mindless leisure with restorative leisure. If you are mindlessly scrolling, replace it with restorative leisure, like reading fiction or meditation. The compound effect is accumulating emotional resilience and mental clarity. This is not multitasking. Multitasking splits focus and degrades performance. Cognitive pairing matches an automatic low brain power task with a higher value, audio-visual or tactile-based growth task. The human brain deeply resists sacrifice. It perceives loss as a threat, but it readily accepts combination. Compounding thrives where resistance is lowest. By integrating growth into the existing architecture of your life, you bypass the psychological toll of discipline and let accumulation begin instantly. Beyond internal systems, let's discuss environmental design, letting life train you. Beyond internal systems, there is an external force that is either the greatest lever for compounding or the greatest anchor. Environment. Willpower, as we established, is fragile, finite, and easily defeated. Environment is persistent. It is the unblinking 24/7 influence that quietly shapes behavior, often without conscious input. Every small environmental choice you make silently dictates your daily path. The proximity of your phone, the visibility of healthy food, the arrangement of your desk. Small environmental choices quietly shape behavior every day. An intelligently designed environment acts as a silent trainer, gently pushing you toward your desired direction. A workspace free of clutter asks your mind to engage more deeply. The water bottle on the desk, the standing mat, the nearby weights, all ask your body to move more. The book placed prominently, the notebook open, the power-sapping devices hidden away, all ask your habits to shift without a heroic effort of will. Let's talk about the wisdom of adaptation. The wisdom here is avoiding prescriptive dogma. What works for one person may be unsafe or unrealistic for another. The principles must be adapted, not copied. The lesson is not do this. The lesson is this. Your environment is either compounding for you by making the right choices easy, or it is compounding against you by making the wrong choices effortless. Audit your immediate surroundings. What is your silent curriculum teaching you? Now, for an uncomfortable truth, compounding works both ways. This brings us to an essential and uncomfortable truth. The law of accumulation is not prejudiced. Compounding is neutral. It builds slowly, and critically, it destroys slowly. We often ignore the small negative inputs because they are non-urgent. But this is the fatal error. Small problems ignored don't stay small. They compound interest on the negative side of the ledger. A minor health issue postponed doesn't just wait, it often calcifies into a chronic condition. A small leak in the roof or a tiny piece of debt left unattended doesn't remain static. It expands, causing exponentially higher repair or interest costs. A quiet relationship strain doesn't resolve itself. It becomes the unspoken foundation for a future explosion. Each one compound, not dramatically, but quietly, until one day the issue crosses the same threshold we discussed earlier, and the cost is large, urgent, and unavoidable. This is the great economic truth of life. The cheapest problems are the ones fixed early. The most expensive are the ones we get used to. Maintenance is not boring, it is compounding in reverse. It is the necessary small inputs that prevent the negative compound effect from taking hold. This leads to the necessity of anticipatory compounding, preparing early. One of the most common psychological traps is the avoidance of long-term planning. Many people avoid budgeting, planning, or thinking ahead because nothing feels urgent yet. The future is a quiet, distant coastline, and there is no visible storm. But life stages are not surprises. They are scheduled realities. Career pivots are coming. Health shifts are coming. The financial demands of aging and retirement are coming. Preparing early doesn't require intensity. It requires small, early investment. A little time spent researching career paths reduces the chaos of a midlife pivot later. A little money saved consistently eliminates the desperate scramble for capital when an opportunity arises. A little attention paid to core friendships prevents the isolation that compounds in later years. The principle is simple. The earlier you start, the less force you need later. There's a reason countries build armies in peacetime. Preparation is not pessimism, it is realism. A calm life is rarely an accident. It is usually the result of quiet, intentional preparation. Let's borrow a simple idea from finance, opportunity cost. We return briefly to the domain of finance, not to discuss money, but to extract a simple but powerful idea that applies to all of life. Opportunity cost. This concept states that the true cost of any decision is the value of the best alternative you must give up. In the context of compounding, the opportunity cost of inaction is devastating. Doing nothing is not neutral. Time not invested intentionally is still allocated. It is allocated to distraction, shallow consumption, or decay. Every hour spent avoiding the future or mindlessly scrolling is an hour not compounding in your favor. This doesn't mean you need to do more. It means you need to waste less. The opportunity cost of the hour you spent reading a profound book is the hour you didn't spend watching low-value television. Wasting less is a form of preemptive compounding, a subtle shift in allocation that yields enormous dividends. We must also address the risk of the sunk cost fallacy: when to stay, when to change. The compound effect presents a fascinating paradox. Some people quit too early, becoming impatient before compounding has had the necessary time to work its magic. Others stay too long, suffering through years in the wrong direction simply because they have already invested so much time and energy. This is the sunk cost fallacy. They confuse persistence with wisdom. This is the sharp edge of practical intelligence. Wisdom lies between stubbornness and impatience. Let's visit the compounding paradox: when to hold and when to fold. You should stay when you are following the system and the work is aligned with your values and direction. You are seeing micro progress, learning small wins, even if macro results are absent. You should change when the direction is fundamentally misaligned with your identity or core constraints. The effort is generating negative returns, such as a severe mental or physical health decline. A new, clearly superior opportunity has emerged that offers a far better compounding vector. Compounding rewards patience, not blind, unthinking persistence. Know the difference between a natural delay in results and a fundamental flaw in your direction. Now let's consider option value and small bets. Here's a layer of depth that most popular discussions on compounding miss. Progress doesn't always pay in immediate visible results. Sometimes it pays in options. The greatest value of compounding is the increase in option value, the non-financial asset of flexibility and future choice. Skills create flexibility. A secondary skill set means you are not reliant on a single employer. Health creates independence. Strong physical health preserves your freedom of movement and action far into the future. Savings create freedom. A financial cushion gives you the option to walk away from a toxic situation or seize a time-sensitive opportunity. You don't need to use these options immediately. You just need to have them. Options are insurance against the unpredictable nature of the future. This is why small, low-risk efforts, small bets, are so powerful. They require minimal commitment but yield maximal option value. They preserve your ability to choose later. Wisdom is not committing early. It is keeping doors open. Before we conclude, a brief acknowledgement: why people avoid the future. People don't avoid thinking about their future, their direction, or their systems because they don't care or are inherently lazy. They avoid it for complex, often compassionate reasons. Thinking requires energy. Strategic long-term planning is deep work, which is cognitively expensive. Planning creates anxiety. To acknowledge the future is to acknowledge its risks, its vulnerabilities, and its demands. Skills may be missing. They don't know how to budget, how to plan, or how to set up the system. Resources may be limited. The idea of saving or investing when they are struggling can feel like a cruel joke. Avoidance is often a symptom of cognitive overload, not irresponsibility. It is the brain's defense mechanism against a problem that feels too large. The message of compounding does not require perfection or a guilt trip. It begins the moment pressure is reduced enough for coherent thought to return. Start small. We'll explore the psychology of overwhelm and its remedies more deeply in a separate, dedicated episode. To close, let's consider the poem My Wage. There is an old poem by Jesse B. Rittenhouse which captures the silent, non-negotiable mechanism of life's rewards perfectly. I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening. When I counted my scanty store, life is a just employer. He gives you what you ask, but once you have set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn, dismayed, that any wage I had asked of life life would have willingly paid. Life pays exactly what we ask for, not through our whispered intentions, but through our compounding behavior. The wages of regret or reward are set quietly every day by the small choices we make. The results arrive later as the inevitable conclusion of the calculation. Look back at the trajectory of your life or the lives of those you admire. People rarely regret the effort they put in. They regret what they never started. They regret the slow compounding drift of inaction. The compound effect is the answer to that regret. It is not a philosophy of heroic struggle. It is a philosophy of wise allocation. It doesn't demand sacrifice. It doesn't demand intensity. It asks only for three things: direction and honest assessment of the right vector for you right now. Systems, simple integrated structures that automate progress past the point of willpower. Time, the patience to let the invisible forces of accumulation do their inevitable work. Regret is the cumulative effect of postponed beginnings. The time to begin compounding is not tomorrow or next year or when you are finally motivated. The time is now with the smallest possible input in the quietest, most sustainable way. Your journey toward practical wisdom begins with clarity, and I'm honored to walk that path with you. Together, we're building a world where wisdom is practical, accessible, and deeply human. If you enjoyed this video, like it, share it with others, and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and as always, think deeply, live wisely. See you next week.